My brother-in-law's wife has had an unhealthy obsession with my wife, and after she completely lost it over our adoption announcement, everything exploded when she accused my wife of corrupting her, and I finally confronted her about wanting to replace me. Sorry for all the grammatical errors. I'm still pretty shaken up. I, 28M, have been with my wife, 27F, for 5 years, married for 3. Everything has been great between her family and me, and I consider us all to be very close, excluding my brother-in-law's wife, 25F. Not that I haven't tried to build a relationship with her, but I was warned by my wife the first time I met her that she gets really clingy with female friends, and she has definitely lived up to that. This clingy behavior has shown up many times while we were dating. Some examples would be asking my wife to share a hotel bed with her on my first vacation with her family after my mother-in-law said she got my wife and me a separate room, accusing me of isolating my wife from her friends and being controlling. I'm literally the least controlling person ever. Showing up to our apartment unannounced multiple times a week just to see my wife. The list could literally go on and on. I do want to preface this by saying every time she steps out of line, my wife and my in-laws correct her. But when called out, she always blames her anxiety disorder and depression, and her horrible actions are always forgotten. But after her behavior at our wedding 3 years ago, where she basically cried through the entire ceremony and tried to give a toast during the reception that turned into her sobbing about losing her best friend, yes, even though they'd only known each other for 2 years. My mother-in-law had to physically remove her from the mic, and it was very embarrassing. My wife had to have a serious talk with her and set some very firm boundaries. Since that talk, she still FaceTimes my wife daily, but has pretty much stayed away from me and has kept her outward hostility and public scenes to a minimum. That brings us to last night. My in-laws always host a huge New Year's gathering for all the family, including distant relatives. We have always had a great time, and I've managed to stay cordial with my brother-in-law's wife, despite the weird stare she was giving me. But this year is different. We announced that we were finalizing the adoption of our 6-year-old foster daughter next month. My brother-in-law's wife threw a fit, ran out of the room, loudly sobbing, and locked herself in the bathroom, leaving what was supposed to be a happy time dead silent with a few awkward congratulations. My mother-in-law rolled her eyes and went to follow her, but I stopped her and told her that I could go. I was hoping that this would finally be a time where we could actually have a conversation, and maybe I could get her to finally tell me, after 5 years, why she felt like I was such a threat. I was wrong. I knocked on the door and went in, and she immediately screamed at me to get out, but I asked if we could talk. I honestly didn't even know what I was going to say to her, but I didn't have to say anything because my wife and mother-in-law came in behind me. My wife very harshly asked her why she always had to ruin things to get attention. That's been her stance the entire time. Not that she has an unhealthy attachment to my wife, but that she has a constant need for attention. She asked my wife why she was so selfish, which obviously left her confused. She then yelled, "You're just going to abandon everyone for some random kid? It's pathetic." My wife, being her usual direct self, said, "Yeah, she's our daughter. We're building a family. What's your point?" My mother-in-law laughed, and that sent her into a rage. She started screaming and throwing things at the wall like a freaking toddler. By this point, I had had enough. I can't even remember what all I said, only that the only thing that was pathetic was her emotionally codependent fixation on my wife, and I asked if she wanted to be with her romantically, because it kind of seemed like she did. I realized I was screaming by the end of it. My brother-in-law's wife just covered her face and sobbed. My wife tried to comfort her, but my mother-in-law pulled my wife and me out of the bathroom. When we got downstairs, pretty much everyone was leaving, and my father-in-law looked like he could punch someone. So my wife and I left too. I cried pretty much all the way home with my wife, trying her hardest to assure me I did nothing wrong. When we got home, she told me to try to sleep and went out to the patio while she called her parents. I feel bad because I truly do love my in-laws and don't want to ruin our relationship. Now I'm lying here, questioning if I spoke out of turn, implying that it was more than just attention seeking. Top/relevant comments. Commenter, not the jerk. You just said out loud what your wife should have said from the beginning. I know she spoke to her about what she did at your wedding, but what about all the other things? All the things she said about you? Showing up unannounced? Really? That's creepy. Congratulations on your adoption. And if you need to stay away from her for a while for your own sake, no one should blame you. That's her fault. OP's response. She has addressed the showing up thing and talked to her many times about boundaries and how it looked weird, which she blamed on feeling abandoned. After the talk after the wedding, my wife read up on codependency and realized that's exactly what it was. She emotionally distanced herself, but stayed in contact over FaceTime. Commenter 2, not the jerk at all. Her behavior is abnormal. I think you should leave that alone in the future, though. Your reaction was warranted, but unhealthy for you. After years of it, I'm shocked you didn't call her out sooner. Stress does that to you, though. Her family needs to intervene and seek therapy for her. Her actions and reactions are outrageous, irrational, and potentially dangerous. I've seen enough documentaries to be afraid of something happening. But that is not your fight. It's hers and her family's. I do highly recommend staying away from her and never allowing her near that child, even supervised. If she can act like that in public with everyone around at a wedding, she can snap while near the child. I don't care if it makes waves with everyone. Her reactions show she is a danger and she could harm the child or even you and your wife, especially if her mental health is unmanaged as it clearly is. Discuss this possibility with your wife first, then have her discuss it with your in-laws. Tell them her actions made you feel unsafe and nothing will make you trust her. Express that you have tried and you absolutely love your in-laws. They're always welcome, but she is not. Your wife and in-laws are awesome though, minus your brother-in-law's wife. Just wanted to add that they are on your side. Opie's response: you don't have to worry. I will never breathe the same air as her again. Update hours later. I just want to hop on here to say that my wife just got off the phone with her parents and they are extremely mad at my brother-in-law's wife. She asked me if I seriously thought she had romantic feelings for her, and this all stemmed from jealousy. Apparently, my father-in-law has thought the same thing since an incident happened last summer where my wife and I were talking about planning a romantic getaway, and my brother-in-law's wife stormed out and didn't come back for the rest of the day, but he was trying to convince himself he was wrong. I told my wife I don't know if it was necessarily romantic attraction, but it is definitely obsession. All 5 of them, including my brother-in-law, are going to sit down tomorrow morning to have a conversation. I'll update again after that happens. For now, all is good and nobody thinks that I ruined New Year's. LOL. Second update 1 day later. I just woke up and holy cow. I think I need to preface a little bit. I messed up on my original post. She has diagnosed generalized anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder, not just anxiety. She started showing signs of social anxiety at 17 or 18. Before this, she had a normal friend group. Honestly, maybe less social than most teenagers. This was before my wife and I were together. It was during the height of lockdown, and my brother-in-law's wife had just finished her first year of college. My in-laws didn't really know her well at the time, since she and my brother-in-law had only been dating for about a year. Long story short, she had a severe panic attack and dissociative episode while my brother-in-law was on a work trip. My wife, who was living at home at the time, found her having the episode and stayed with her until my brother-in-law could get home. This was really traumatic for my wife. She felt responsible because she felt she should have recognized the signs earlier since they'd been spending time together. This led my wife to overcompensate when she recovered. Basically, checking in on her constantly, video calling her every night, even staying over at their apartment to keep her company when my brother-in-law worked nights. From what my wife says, brother-in-law's wife seemed grateful at first. Everyone suggested therapy after the episode. After a couple of months, my wife started therapy herself for anxiety and began giving her space. And after a year of therapy, my wife felt much better. Brother-in-law's wife went through another severe episode the first few months of my wife and I dating and was hospitalized for 3 days, this time being formally diagnosed with panic disorder and major depression. She still receives treatment. Now, for a small update. My mother-in-law called me and said she didn't feel comfortable with me coming this morning for my own safety, but she didn't want me to feel like they were hiding anything from me. So, she's going to call me during the conversation. My wife's aunt, she's actually her mom's best friend from college. To be honest, I have no idea how she fits in, is a licensed therapist, and was there last night. She's going to be there. She was the one who suggested this intervention, so I guess she's going to mediate. She doesn't treat my brother-in-law's wife, obviously, but knows about her history. Even though they are on my side, I think my mother-in-law and my wife think this is all some big misunderstanding. I think my father-in-law, on the other hand, has been paying closer attention for a while and doesn't have the same hope. My brother-in-law is apparently torn because he loves his wife but knows something is wrong. My brother-in-law's wife is apparently pretending nothing happened and is acting normal this morning. My wife has already left for their house, so I'll hopefully have another update soon. I'll probably just comment on this post because this is getting long, but I really appreciate all the comments and showed them to my wife this morning. I think she left with a better understanding of what she was dealing with. Third update hours later. I don't even know how to write this out. I seriously feel like this isn't real life, but I'm doing it now, so I don't forget details and I think it might be good for my own mental health to vent. Like I said, I read all the comments and messages to my wife early this morning before she left, including the one suggesting she might be more at fault than she or I want to believe. My mother-in-law called me as soon as my wife arrived. I muted myself and have no idea if my brother-in-law's wife had been told that I was on the phone or not. I could hear them all sit down and my brother-in-law's wife sighed dramatically, which caused my mother-in-law to tell her that this was serious and that her behavior was unacceptable and needed to be discussed. I'm sorry if the dialogue is hard to read, but I can't be bothered to do this more grammatically correct right now. This is obviously not going to be the exact conversation, but as accurate as I can remember. Brother-in-law's wife. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry I threw things. Okay, Aunt, this is less about your physical outburst and more about why you felt you were justified in reacting that way at all. Father-in-law, are you in love with my daughter? Wife, crying, please tell me if I have ever done anything to make you think that we were more than just friends. Mother-in-law, please. Father-in-law, you can't really think she's in love with wife? Father-in-law, I do think that, and she obviously has a reason to believe it's okay to act on it, which is why we're here. Mother-in-law, we're here to try and help her with whatever she's going through, not make ridiculous claims. Wife, what did I do? Because I stayed with you during your episodes? I'm so sorry. I was worried. You were struggling, and I didn't see it like that. I tried to give you privacy. I was just scared. Brother-in-law's wife, crying, no, you didn't do anything like that. I just don't like him. Aunt, why don't you like him? Brother-in-law's wife, I just don't. Aunt, that's not an answer. What don't you like about him? Brother-in-law's wife, he was rude to me. Mother-in-law, that's a lie. Wife, you've never been alone with him other than family gatherings, and you were acting this way before we even got engaged. Brother-in-law's wife, it doesn't matter what I say. You think he's perfect. Wife, he's my husband. Brother-in-law's wife, so what? He's controlling. Wife, he literally encouraged me to go on that girls' trip with you last year. That doesn't make any sense. Brother-in-law's wife, so did I. I want to say that this has always been something brother-in-law's wife brings up. That my wife and I went on a trip together early in our relationship and didn't invite her, even though we weren't even that serious yet. Mother-in-law, father-in-law, and wife all try to talk at the same time, and Aunt stops them. Aunt, why does it matter that you also invited her on a trip? Brother-in-law's wife starts crying. Father-in-law, yelling, I can't do this. You will tell us what the hell is going on right now. Aunt tries to stop father-in-law, I assume, from standing up. I can hear mother-in-law and wife crying. Father-in-law, you'll be out of this house tonight if you don't explain yourself. There was a long silence and lots of sniffling. This is where things kind of get rough, so I'm trying to remember as best I can. Sorry if there are gaps. Brother-in-law's wife says something about a letter. Aunt, what letter? Brother-in-law's wife, the letter I gave her when she stayed over after my second hospitalization. Wife obviously confused. What? I'm sorry. I don't remember any letter. I was more focused on making sure you were okay. She then says something along the lines of replaying those nights over and over, and it never once occurred to her that there was a letter. I think this is true because we've talked about that time many times and never once has she mentioned a letter. Brother-in-law's wife starts sobbing again. Father-in-law, you left her a letter? Aunt tells father-in-law to calm down. Aunt, what was in the letter? Another long silence. Mother-in-law or wife? I can't remember. Asks again what was in the letter. Brother-in-law's wife whispered, I told her I loved her. Father-in-law throws up or slams something and leaves the room. Mother-in-law, you told her you loved her romantically? Wife says something along the lines of being married at the time and how inappropriate that was. Not to mention that she was her sister-in-law's wife. Aunt, did you want wife to reciprocate your feelings? I don't think she answered the question. Brother-in-law's wife, I saw the pictures. Wife, what pictures? Brother-in-law's wife, the pictures from your bachelorette party. Your friends were showing everyone. She then said something about my wife looking so happy in them without her and laughing with her friends during the reception and that it was hurtful. My wife had a bachelorette party that brother-in-law's wife wasn't invited to because they weren't that close yet. My wife's close friends organized it. Mother-in-law, is that why you pulled that stunt at the wedding? Aunt, so what do you want to get out of this by causing trouble in your sister-in-law's marriage? Brother-in-law's wife, I wanted her to leave him. Aunt, and do what? Brother-in-law's wife, I don't know. Aunt, yes, you do. Father-in-law comes back in and asks her if the only reason she wrote the letter was to try to break them up. Mother-in-law starts chanting, no, 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 over and over. Wife, what did you think was going to happen? I was going to leave my husband and be with my brother-in-law's wife? Mother-in-law says she's going to be sick and brother-in-law's wife just cries. It says something like her silence is the answer. Nobody has a choice but to believe the accusations if she doesn't explain herself. She still didn't say anything. Father-in-law, you need help that we can't give you. Brother-in-law's wife, I just needed wife. I started panicking at this point and had to hang up. My wife called not even 5 minutes later and said she was coming home, that nothing else was said after I hung up. She was sobbing and I have no idea what to say to her. She said she might need to go back to therapy and I agreed. She also said we might need to move closer to her parents for support. I don't want to do that, but I don't know what else to do. I have no idea what's happening with my brother-in-law's wife, and my wife said she needed some time before she could talk anymore about it. I've never seen her this upset over anything, and I know I shouldn't, but I feel responsible, not for marrying my wife, but maybe I did something to make her feel intentionally excluded. I know I probably should have tried harder to include her in things, but I was just dating my wife. I just don't know what to do now or how to fix it. Top/relevant comments. Commenter 1. First, of course, you didn't do anything wrong. Your brother-in-law's wife is deeply troubled. Second, there's no fixing this. Your brother-in-law's wife needs serious, intense therapy, and that should not involve you or your wife, especially in the early stages. All you can do is follow your wife's lead with her family, support her, and stay away from your brother-in-law's wife. I am very sorry for her that she has to confront this, and the processing will be very difficult for her. But let her do it. Commenter 2. It seems this has been an issue your brother-in-law's wife has had since before her second hospitalization. It sounds like she has been trying to get her attention all along. She has serious issues that she needs help for. It's not anybody's fault. You just need to be supportive for your wife right now. She's feeling a lot of complicated emotions and probably struggling with blaming herself for not seeing how troubled she was. You need to be there for each other while you heal from this. Focus on your family and the adoption. Building the future. I suggest you get into individual and couples counseling. You will come out of this stronger. Fourth update, hours later. Last update for a while. My brother-in-law's wife is going inpatient. My wife called my brother-in-law a few hours after she returned home to formally establish boundaries. And I think maybe to see if this was all some sick misunderstanding. She had a complete breakdown. She brought up a specific instance when my wife hugged her goodbye after a dinner at their apartment. She apparently thought that hug lasted longer than normal and meant something more. She was reading into everything. This was about 6 months into my wife and I dating. Apparently, she brought it up during the intervention after I hung up and said she'd been collecting evidence of my wife's feelings for her. My wife was mortified and hadn't even thought twice about the hug. Of course, the family explained that it was a normal goodbye hug and nothing more. This instance was apparently what started her belief that my wife had feelings for her too. She said some truly disturbing things that I will not repeat here. When my wife told her that this was all in her head and that she had never thought about her like that, she threatened to hurt herself to make my wife stay in her life. Needless to say, the crisis team was called about an hour ago, and I couldn't imagine they wouldn't keep her there. My wife has switched from guilt to anger, but I believe anything she's feeling right now is valid. Top/relevant comments. Commenter. That is 10 pounds of nonsense in a 2 pound bag, and I hope Opie and his spouse move far, far away before they end up on a true crime podcast. Commenter 2. I don't think there's enough yikes in the world to cover my reaction to this story. Commenter 3. You know what? It's my fault for learning how to read. That is enough internet for the night.